Hi, in this tutorial we're going to make this Happy Easter scrapbook page. Alright, let's start with a new document. I have a new document here, 12 by 12. Let's bring in a background. Let's come and get our backgrounds. I'm going to use this background right here. Let's bring in our Happy Easter graphic. We built this graphic in a tutorial a couple of weeks ago, and there will be a link to that tutorial in our description below, and also at the end of this tutorial there will be a link to that tutorial. We'll just pull that in and we'll size it. We'll make it a little bit smaller by dragging on those corner squares. Those are called handles. And we'll put it up here in the upper left hand corner. Click the check mark. Now I want to put a border around our scrapbook page, and I want to use the same gradient that we have in Easter. Let's click on the rectangular marquee tool, and then let's make a new layer. Just click on this new layer button up here at the top of the layers panel. I'm going to just come in 3/4 of an inch and down 3/4 of an inch. I'm just looking at the rulers, and if you don't see the rulers, come up under View, Rulers, and there's your keyboard shortcut for the rulers. Shift Command R on a Mac, Shift Control R on a PC. I'm going to come in 3/4 of an inch and down 3/4 of an inch. Click and drag over to 11 1/4 on both the top and the side. And let go, and you've got your selection. Come up under Edit, Stroke, outline the selection. 50 pixels should be a nice border. Click OK. Command D or Control D on a PC to deselect our selection. Now we have a black border, and we want that to be a gradient. Let's make a gradient fill layer. Come up under this symbol right here. These are your adjustment layers and your fill layers. Click on that and we'll pick a gradient. Now let's click on our gradient right here. That will open the gradient editor. We need to pick a gradient that doesn't have any transparency. This one goes from black to transparent. Just click on any of these gradients up here. As long as it doesn't have transparency, we're going to change the colors anyway. These are your color stops. So use these to set your colors in your gradient. You can select them just by clicking on the little square. You can tell it's selected when the little triangle above it becomes black. Now we can choose what color is going to go in there by clicking on this color swatch. And that opens the color picker. The way we created the gradient when we made Easter is we just picked the colors along this bar. So let's start with the red. We'll just pick a red up here, and you can see that it filled in the red over here in our bar in our gradient. Now to add stops, all you need to do is click underneath this bar, and it will add a stop. And you can tell that stop is selected because the triangle above it has turned black. Click on your color swatch. Let's just go down this bar and select our different colors. Add another stop. Click on the swatch. Let's get this dark blue. Click OK. Add another stop. Click on the swatch. Go with the light blue. Click OK. Make a new stop. Click the swatch. Let's go with the green. New stop. Click the swatch. Let's go with the yellow. New stop. Click the swatch. Let's go with the orange. And now our last stop. Select it. Click the swatch, and we'll just pick that red. You can control these colors by just moving these stops around a little bit. You can see how the position of these colors change as I move these stops around. These diamonds control the transition between the colors. You can have a hard transition or a soft transition. Here we have a hard transition. It's usually better to keep it right about in the middle between those stops. That way you have a smooth transition between the colors. Once you get it the way you want it, click OK. And click OK. Now you can see our gradient goes over our whole artboard. We want to limit that just to the border. So we can do that by clipping this gradient layer to our border. What that means is this gradient will only be visible where there are pixels on this border layer. So hold down the Option if you're on a Mac or the Alt if you're on a PC, and when you move your cursor up in between those two layers, it turns into a square with an arrow pointing down. And that clips our gradient layer to our border layer so that the only place where the gradient's visible is in the border. Now we can double click on that gradient layer and modify that gradient. I want my gradient to go diagonally, so I want it to go from this corner down to that corner. So I can turn this little dial so that it's going more at an angle. You can see that we're not getting any of our reds to show up. So let's scale this just a little bit. Just hold your cursor over the word scale and it turns into a hand with a double-headed arrow. Click and drag to the left to make it a little smaller. Now we can see our red showing up. Just click OK. I'm going to move the border down so it's just above our background layer. Hold down the Shift and select both of those layers. I'm actually going to put them in a group, so hit Command G or Control G if you're on a PC, or you can just hit this icon up here. That'll put it in a group. Let's name that border. I'm going to move that whole group down, so just click and hold with your mouse and drag that down, and just as you get above the background layer, you'll see the line get dark and thick and black. Just drop it right there. Let's bring in some pictures. Let's come down here to the photo bin. I have these pictures open already. Let's drag the picture in. Get our move tool. I'm going to move it down here and I'm going to rotate it just a little bit. If you move your cursor up here to the corner, it turns into a curved double-headed arrow. Just click and drag to rotate it around. When you get it where you like it, click the check mark. We can see it's going behind our border, so let's move that layer up in the layer stack. Okay, let's bring in our other picture. Okay, we'll do the same thing as we did with that other one. We'll bring it down and we'll rotate it just a little bit. Click the check mark. That came in under our border too, so let's go ahead and move it up in the layer stack like we did the last one. Now I want to put some shapes behind those pictures. Just like in traditional scrapbooking, we'll add some layers to it, make a layer effect. Let's come over here to our shapes panel. Let's find some shapes. Okay, I'm going to use these shapes right here. Let's pull one in. Let's make it a little bit bigger. I want to match the orientation of the picture, so I'm going to rotate it just a little bit and adjust the size. I'm going to make it cover that whole picture. Something like that. Click OK. I want to color that this lighter green color that we have in this Easter graphic, but we created that Easter graphic with a texture. Let's zoom in on that. Grab the eyedropper tool. You want to make sure that this says 5 by 5. If you have the single sample point selected, it's only going to select 1 pixel. And there's a good chance you'll get the wrong color. If you have 5 by 5, it's actually going to select 5 pixels wide by 5 pixels tall, which is 25 pixels, and it's going to average them together, and there's a good chance you'll get the right color that you want. I'm going to just make sure I get a color right around in here. And that becomes our foreground color. Hit Command 0 or Control 0 to zoom back out. Let's get the paint bucket and just click right on that shape. And that paints that shape our new foreground color. Let's bring in another shape for our other picture. Let's bring in this one. Let's make it a little bit bigger and we'll rotate it and we'll just make it try and fit over the top of that picture like we did our other one. Let's color that the same way we did the other one. Let's get the paint bucket. We still have our foreground color. Let's just click right on that shape. Okay, perfect. Now let's move them behind the pictures. Let's just move those shapes down in our layer stack underneath the pictures. Let's put a layer style on those pictures. I want to put a border and a drop shadow on those. So let's select one of the pictures. Come up under Layer, Layer Style, Style Settings. Click on Stroke. Let's give it a little bit of a stroke by pulling this slider to the right. I don't want it to be a black stroke. I want it to be a white stroke. Let's click on this color swatch. Just click up here and drag into that corner. You'll get pure white. Click OK. Now let's give it a drop shadow. Click on the drop shadow. This dial determines where the light's coming from. So I like to have the light coming from the upper left. That'll put the shadow down here on the lower right. Distance will determine how far from our border the shadow is. So let's just pull this over until we begin to see it. Whoa, that's a little too far. Let's take it back. Okay. Size determines how hard or how soft our shadow is. If you pull this slider over to the left, it gets very hard. If you pull the slider to the right, it gets very soft, almost where it disappears. Let's pull it back a little bit, not too hard, not too soft. Maybe about like that. Let's make it just a little bit darker by pulling this opacity slider over. Click OK. Now I want to put the same thing around this other picture. All I need to do is copy that layer style by holding down the Option on a Mac or the Alt on a PC. Click on that FX and just drag it down to this other picture. And there we go. We've got our border and we've got our shadow. Let's do the same thing around our Happy Easter. Hold down the Option or the Alt and click and drag that up to our Happy Easter graphic. Now I don't want the stroke around that, but I do want the shadow. So let's just double click on that FX. And that opens up our layer styles. Just turn the stroke off and click OK. Now let's bring in one more shape. We're going to put it up here where you can do some journaling. So let's grab another one of these shapes. Let's bring in this shape. You can change the size by dragging on one of these squares that are around the outside of this shape. These squares are called handles, and you can use the corner handles or you can use the middle handles. It doesn't matter. Just make this shape the way that you want it, how big you want it, and move it into position. Okay, I like that. Click the check mark. Let's color that the same. Get the paint bucket. We still have our color there in the foreground. Click on that. Now let's get our type tool. This is a place to do some journaling. Just click and drag to create a box for our type to go into. Let's change the size. Just hover over the word size and your cursor turns into a hand with the double-headed arrow. Just click and drag to the left will make our size a little bit smaller. Let's go down to about, 21, 22. Let's change this to black. Click on that swatch, pick a black color. I'm just going to put lines in here. You can put lines in here, and once your scrapbook page is printed, you can actually go in and write your journaling in your own handwriting and make it a little more personal. Or you can go ahead and just type in your journaling, whatever you want. It's up to you. Since we made that box for our type, it's constraining our type to that box. Click the check mark. Now I'm going to put the names in here, but I'm going to use a different effect. I'm going to use an oval shape to shape our type. Click on the type tool and select the type on a shape. I've got Bickham script. I want this type to be white, so I'm going to choose white. I want it to be bigger. I want it to be about 100-point type. There's 100 points. Now I'm going to drag an oval for our type to go on. We've got our oval selected. We've got our type. We've got our color. We've got our point size. Let's just draw an oval. Something like that. Now when you move your cursor up to this oval, it turns into an I-beam with a little squiggly line on it. Click right there and let's type. Within the shapes group, we have a shape selection tool. You might have one of these other shapes in the tool panel. But within that group is this selection tool right here. Make sure that that's selected. Come up here. Your cursor turns into an I-beam with a little arrow pointing to the right. You can just click and drag. This is a little tricky and it takes a little bit of time to figure it out. We're moving this over here. Let's drag this little circle around. We went on the inside of our oval. Moving your cursor inside or outside of the oval will move your type inside or outside of the oval. Now you can see we've lost part of our word, so let's just click, drag that around. You have a little X there and a little O over here. If you slide this O too far over, you'll start to lose part of your type. Make sure that all of your type is between that X and the O, and you can position that around the oval by moving the X and the O around the oval. I'm going to leave it about like that. Let's put in our other name. Same thing. Type on a shape, oval. Everything else is still the same. Let's just make another oval here. And we'll make it just visually about the same size as the first one we did. I'm going to click on our oval about right here. I want this to go on the inside of our oval, and I want it to arc down. Let's get our shape selection tool. Let's move that onto the inside. And it went right down there where we want it. Perfect. Okay, let's get our move tool. We'll move that up. Kind of place them where we want them. That one. That one. I want this to flow this way, this one to flow this way so that they kind of nest together. I want to put an ampersand in there. I'm not going to use the type on a shape. I'm just going to use the regular type tool. I'm going to click in there and type my ampersand. Let's make it a little bit bigger by dragging on that word size. And then let's move it into position. I like how this flows into this space, and I like how this flows into this space. If you want to change your font, you can highlight your type and then select your type down here in the menu, and you can just use your arrow keys, up and down arrow keys, to scroll through or cycle through the different fonts that you have open on your computer. I'm going to go back to the Bickham script that I had. Let's put a layer style on that. We have Kirsten selected. Let's come up under Layer, Layer Style, Style Settings. Let's give it a drop shadow. Just move these sliders until you get something that you like. Let's give it a stroke. Click OK. Now let's just copy that style to the other layers. Hold down the Option if you're on a Mac, or the Alt if you're on a PC, and just grab that FX and drag it to the other layers. And there we go. Looks like we still had the line selected when we changed our type to make those names. So let's change those lines back to black, and let's make them a little bit smaller. Let's take them back down to 18 to 20 point type, somewhere in there. Click OK. Let's go to the graphics panel. Let's bring in some more of those daisies. It's just as extra graphic elements. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Something like that. Now if you hold down the Command and the Option on a Mac, or the Control and the Alt on a PC, your cursor turns into a double arrow, a black arrow and a white arrow. That will copy that graphic. And it also puts it on a new layer. So we can just do that a couple times. Let's bring another one down here. We'll leave this one bigger. Let's copy that one. And one more copy, maybe right there. Okay, now let's take a quick look and make sure everything is the way we want it. I see that our shape here is going over our Easter graphic, so let's just make sure we move our Easter graphic up to the top. Okay, that's going over there. Everything's over our border. Right here, I'm not sure I like that shape going over the picture. Let's move this shape down below the other picture. There. I think I like that better. You can make your own decision and do whatever you want. I think I like that better, and I think we're done. Let's save that. We want to save that as a PSD. Come up under File, Save As. Give it a name and select the folder you're going to save it into. I'm already in the folder that I want. Make sure you have Photoshop right there. It's a Photoshop document. That'll save it as a PSD. That will save all those layers. And if you ever want to go in and make any changes or make any revisions, you can do that because you'll have all of those layers. You can go back in next week, next year, 10 years from now, and make changes to this document. Click Save. Let's just do that again. Click Save, Save As. We're going to save it as a JPEG this time. That's going to flatten it. You can see it just added edited -1 to the end of the name. You can give it a new name if you want. Click Save. I always make my quality the highest quality, so drag your slider all the way to the right. And click OK. Now the JPEG is the one that you use to print your scrapbook page. Your PSD file is one that you'll save in case you ever want to go in and make any changes or corrections. Covered a lot of things in this tutorial. If you like what you saw, or if you've learned anything new, don't forget to subscribe. Click that bell. You'll get notifications whenever I upload a new video. I try and upload one every week. Don't forget to check out the video on how to make that Happy Easter graphic. I'll put a link down below in the description. There'll also be a link following this video. Thanks for joining me in this tutorial. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.